Yo, so assalamu alaikum, people. Um, what do I have to talk about today? And yes, I am using Mario Party gameplay. Awesome, isn't it right? Anyways, what do I have to talk about today? If you've been keeping up with my community post and what I've been posting through commentary, it's mainly associating about the debating community. This isn't exactly about the community itself, but about an individual, a retard, who I like to dub an Indian Pajit. No offense towards Indians, because this is a specific Indian I'm talking about. He's very egotistical, so no offense to you guys. It's just I hate egotistical people, and I believe if you are doing something to be oppressive towards other people, like being egotistical, trying to put them down, trying to assert your dominance over them, I believe you should obviously be called something, which would probably break your fucking stance and your fucking neck and how you view things. This retard's name is Ravi. Who is Ravi in question? Where is his teacher? Oh yes, you already see it. The retardation is coming. Well, it's already came, in the form of community post. But here I am talking about it, and I have nothing better to do. So I figured this would actually be a good time to get my thoughts out on like the conversation in general between him and Lane. Lane came to Sarah's server and found him talking shit on me. Ravi was talking shit about me, saying I lost to Noism. And Ravi was saying I'm terrible. But Lane, not to make this sound like a theology like type video, like Sam Shimon type video, but Lane sits there and proves him to be retarded himself. Like, obviously, when you're someone like me who's hated just for being a yapper and like someone who can actually provide good substance instead of like retards from the com, like Tron, etc., you can obviously see that this shit is laughable when it's basic stuff. So let's get on to the first things. The first thing would be about the conversation, which I want to categorize, and then I'll move on to like the claims about like Noism shit, because like I haven't publicly stated anything about Noism, but I have publicly stated about Tron and shit. I think I beat Tron totally. Yeah, I do. And Daud, if you're watching this video, yeah, there's your answer to the question from the previous discussion. But yeah, let's talk about Ravi. So Ravi has a conversation about PSR with Lane. Ravi thinks brew contingencies are possible under um, PSR. So I think it's important for context of this like virtual examination of the conversation. We need to understand what brew contingency in PSR is. PSR is proficient sufficient reasoning for everything existing in terms of its applicability towards metaphysical propositions and concrete existence. You can hold a solipsistic view, because that would obviously be saying, oh yeah, so the mind is the grounding, everything would probably follow. That's a PSR-istic applicable view. Um, Unless obviously you find the contradictions within it, it's still considered to be a PSR-istic view. But the contradictions within it kind of disprove it. Like, there's many contradictions in that, but there's also theistic accounts. Theistic accounts state God exists. It's simple. The proposition is answered. God exists. That is the account for the specific proposition. But what is the substantive for that specific account being held towards? So, when you make that claim, God exists, you'd be saying He's the reasoning for all contingent facts existing or being substantiated. That is basic CTO, I believe. Contingent facts. I don't know if I'm using the wrong terminology or the wrong etymology for that specific thing, but that specific philosophical doctrine would state that contingent facts in terms of like the universal quantifier, which makes it true of all contingent facts. So obviously you would have the universal quantifier, which would be God, makes all this the case. That's basic predicate logic, and positive predicate logic because it allows for the access of multiple of them, but it also does have limiting predicates. But we're not talking about that. So, um, that's PSR. What is brew contingency? Brew contingency. Obviously, when you talk about the etymology of this philosophical word, you might, after hearing these definitions, might say So why does Ravi, think these things are coherent to actually be inclusive as a metaphysical proposition to be used or applied in terms of actually coherently holding it towards his epistemology, right? So let me answer that for you, which I already kind of did because he still believes in that. But point is, brute contingency, brute obviously stands for nothing. Like there's nothing which grants it. It's just like it's kind of like there's no explanation at all. That like it's a contingent thing with no explanation for its reasoning. There's epistemic brute contingencies. There's also like metaphysical brute contingencies. Obviously, this is what it's kind of referring to when referring towards PSR. Metaphysical ones would have to deal with reality. So let's talk about those and grant a virtual examination of what was said. So Ravi immediately stumbles into not tracking because he's asking Lane, do you think PSR is a logical law? Lane is talking about criterions for reality. Criterions is just obviously criteria. Criteria is something which foundations or is just some type of basis for what we grant and knowing in terms of, obviously the conversation. That's what we're going to grant from a meta perspective. So what is this? What is this like conversation? Lane is like saying, oh yeah, so logical laws are a distinct thing. It's a distinct framework which you uphold. PSR is a thing about reality. Logical laws is open to interpretation based upon stance. He doesn't say that, but that's generally what follows for logical laws. Because if you are to hold PSR in terms of like metaphysical propositions and logical laws, PSR being a logical law under for reality, which Lane is talking about, to actually have a good understanding and tracking of the conversation, to actually engage with Lane here, Ravi would need to take a logical, realistic stance, which he does not because he's just talking about logic in general. Lane clearly makes the token distinction between reality and logical laws in terms of just general consideration and not a specific categorization in which the stance would belong to upon logical laws. So he just kind of deems the question as like irrefutable. He said nobody's saying this, Rob is saying, oh yeah, so I still believe, blue contingencies are still possible. No one cares if you think it's possible, bro. And no one cares if you think it's logically possible, anyways, because we're talking about the framework of PSR, or what format PSR is established in, which I've already gave the definition for us to track this like meta-analysis. Easily, you can already see he's being blown the fuck out just because he doesn't understand the simple like semantics being used. I don't know if this guy's English is dog shit or whatever, but mainly you can obviously see this guy, clearly has no type of experience when actually engaging in terms of like these types of debates. Obviously, when he holds PSR as being coherent with like brute contingencies, so kind of like knows him. He's a pretty retarded atheist. Oh no, he's not an atheist, but he's a Hindu. Hindus are pretty retarded as well, So gotta give it to him. He has their most retarded person award. But let me Okay, so actually, what, I'm gonna say this. Stop for a low, bro. I'm sorry to all the Hindus I insulted, but Ravi, I'm gonna speak about Ravi still. So Ravi, like inside his conversation with Lane, talks about these logical laws. Like Lane, I already went over the counter thing Lane did. And he's just repeating himself. Broadly saying logically possible, Of course, in general metaphysics, it could be, but PSR is not the applicable framework for this. Obviously, when you talk about PSR, it's like saying, okay, so step into these shoes, not these fucking shoes, you retard. It's like get into somebody else's shoes. Not just a general pair of fucking shoes you buy for yourself. Like it's like having these like specific shoes, right? But you can just choose from them. It's like being inside somebody else's shoes, but it's a distinct pair of shoes you are wearing yourself. It's not necessarily going to another person, as the quote says. It's like, you get the fucking point. The analogy kind of sucks, but it generally does underline what I'm trying to say here. The point is that he's talking about logically possible, but not logically possible under the framework of PSR when accepting it or needing it as an epistemic necessity to talk about what we are having here. Because it completely goes against the entire fucking topic we go against, logically possible. It's not logically possible because he's just repeating himself inside the screenshot, he tracked horribly, he's asking if you think PSR is a logical law, Lane doesn't care for all that, he just talk about PSR, So, per se, when obviously going among these, specific, propositions, to specifically debunk what Ravi is also saying, because, if anything, if I had to give my verdict on the conversation given through, what's being said, Ravi got beat up by Lane, it's pretty bad. He got cursed down into the ground, his head got squished, and, he pretty much got an ass beating, in my actual opinion, based upon the perspective I gave, Ravi, just allowed his formulated argumentation to actually be so much absurd that it left a bunch of reductios to Lane just a one shot, or just knowledge cliff, it's bad, he just very weak, low tier stuff, very low tier stuff to do, and this is why we don't actually take Warrior Z or Ravi and his specific group to actually be serious. If you took that group to be serious and you say, oh yeah, this guy's high tier, I would sit here and laugh in your face. See, Warrior Z is talked shit behind by, his friend's back, by the way. He's, talked shit behind his back, badly, by Kel and all that. He's told his ass, Kel has said it to me inside of VC before, back in December of 2024. And, honestly, I have to agree. He's overrated. He's garbage. Fucking sucks ass. And can't engage in actual conversations. But what's important to underline here is that from this experience alone, it's obviously you can tell that he has an ego built upon nothing but arrogance and people hyping him up. His ego isn't built on anything of knowledge or actually granted knowledge. Say for example, I have an ego. I'm not going to deny I don't have an ego, but that's based upon what I know and what I actually obtained through knowledge. Ravi is built up by people who say he won, or just why he thinks he won, or, debates he thinks he won, but not really objectively, or in the sense of actually dialectically. But, obviously, we don't always get that chance to actually know something, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, so this person, not the best of worlds, not the best of people in terms of intelligence, but we all have that mistake, but, having an ego off false shit, it's just gonna kind of give you insecurity, bro, I think that's kind of also expressive with Tron and everything. Also, I've seen, people trying to say Tron is above Apollo. Just a little side comment. Tron is not above Apollo. Apollo is, by far, incredibly more so just above this douchebag Tron. I don't know why anybody would even consider that. I saw, Hyde's tier list. In all honesty, no shade to Hyde, but this tier list got me, fading, bro. Not in the good way. But not to say anything else, because I respect Hyde as a person. I saw his comment section, and he actually did something respectful towards his own religion, which I actually give mutual respect for, because obviously you aren't trying to make, you find, obviously just say, oh yeah, so obviously not trying to be egotistical and actually showing some form of actual following in your religion, a good thing to have. Because there was this commentator at Toronto which said, Hyde is the closest thing we have to Jesus Christ. Hyde was actually being a Giga Chad, and he said, I reject that. Which honestly, in all fairness, as a Muslim, but seeing that Hyde did that, not saying it's the right religion or anything, more so it's just respect out of his own religion, and not trying to be having this ego where he thinks he's God, or God's gift, like most debaters have, it honestly gives like me more respect to Hyde as a person, and actually as a debater to actually have a conversation with. Generally speaking, it gives me that respect for him, like some of these people are so egotistical, but this dude Hyde is out here doing this shit, like generally speaking, it makes me proud and joyful because right now, I can tell you, I'm actually having the happiest feeling just talking about this because another thing I want to address is the glazing within the debating community. Like, the glazing is so bad. The syndicate bias tier list is taking over the community. It's made me want to like just get out of the community because there's no actual genuine truth or listening to substance anymore. It's all just loud miking or who's more favorite. Like there's no genuine substance, or it's just mental gymnastic substance to actually justify why a person won. If anything, some of the tier lists and stuff I've seen is so fucking bad. I genuinely like. I don't know, bro. Like the people these things say, I debated from personal experience. It's just like anecdotal, but why? Like, why do we have people saying this person is God, or this person is God's gift? Like, I can guarantee you, this Gooner guy who came to my comment section before when I made a fucking like list of overrated debaters said, "On God, we could debate this." Motherfucker, you would get stomped out by me. Like, shut the fuck up. Damn. You already got embarrassed by my like fucking friend named Cardi, bro. Like, bro, you got fucking slammed. Like, shut the fuck up, nigga. Ain't nobody think you're rhetorical by saying, "On God, we can debate this, bro." Like, nigga, you fucking white ass suburban kid fucking speak over the fucking computer to talk about this shit, bro. Like, legit, bro, you're fucking ass. Anyways, it genuinely just gets me pissed off when I see people saying, "Oh yeah, this person is God," because it's not just shirk within my own religion. It's just genuinely disrespectful to say that this is great being who should be compared to a divine being, which is held to many people as an actual belief. You're disrespecting religion. Not only that, I don't care if you're atheist. You can be an atheist all you want. You can be a kafir all you want. It's by choice to become Muslim, but at least have some respect for other people's beliefs. Like not just openly saying, "Oh yeah, this person's God." Like just have some decency about other people, man. Consider other people. Generally, this world is so fucked up. People don't consider other people anymore. It's generally just. It's gotten on my nerves to the point where people are backstabbing people. People are going against people's word. People think it's funny to do this shit. People are laughing at Charlie Kirk's death, but as a Muslim, I don't encourage any type of violence. But I will agree, some of the stuff Charlie Kirk said is actually bad. Like he said that, "Oh yeah, so if my daughter got raped, he shouldn't kill the child." That's an extremist type view on abortion. Like just like pro-life. I think it's okay to have like some type of like specific things, but at the same time, you should not be laughing at someone's death. Like I won't say rest in peace, but I will at least respect you as a family, this and that. Like you damaged the family more, and especially the kids. I pray the best for the kids. Hope they realize how like some of the stuff he said was pretty degenerate. But I don't wish them to come to the like realization to resent their father because of the things he said. If anything, just learn some of the stuff he said was wrong, but still respect him for being there, for being a dad, a family. It's just, some of this shit is so fucked up, and that's my commentary on the Charlie Kirk situation, and generally just the community in general, and why I think it's just fucking falling apart. But back to the main point, I had to, like, find something just to stretch this video out for its length time, and I believe I did find it, because I did find something genuine actually expressing my feelings towards that, like, the stuff I see every day about with these people, it's genuinely just, I'm being so genuine when I see that it genuinely just breaks my heart, Like, it fucking breaks my heart, and, like, extortion, packing, all this shit, by people like Mutui, Warzy, who joins them, does kuffar things, not kafir, but can do things that cause kuffar, takfiring, just over beef. You aren't allowing the person to grow any better if you keep harassing them, I think that's another point I made back in another one of my response videos towards the allegations. But if you sit there and just more so, do these types of actions, like say someone else is God, without any type of like sense of consideration towards people, you don't care. Like you don't have to care, but at least just like try and be respectful about it. No one's actually gonna like you if you keep doing that. You're gonna be booed out, except by the people who actually like you. Like, I make my comments towards religion like I did earlier, but I apologize for it because I realized I was wrong. Genuinely, I didn't mean that when I was recording that. It's just genuinely, Ravi gets me pissed off because he talks shit about me behind my back, but can't do it in front of me where he wants to try and debate or just talk about something. Especially with this stupid PSR thing, bro. Like, first of all, actually, I'm going to get to debunking that right now. First of all, PSR states everything must have a proficient reason, objectively and concretely. Brew contingencies are a contingent fact, existentially contingent. Their existence would explain why they exist in the first place. Denying that would deny the knowing of it actually existing or not, which would not give it any type of reason to exist. Which, in fact, would kind of say, oh yeah, so this cannot be applicable in PSR, because PSR states it must have a reason. If it does not have a reason, it's brute. Which makes a distinction between how those frameworks work. The complete idiot. And if you grant a God exists, but brute contingency can happen inside the world, man, God is still the substance of why it does exist. Nothing negates that reasoning. Besides, if you say, oh yeah, so I'm just talking about things induced into reality, or the framework in which the reality has these inhabitants within, blah 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 blah. Okay, so their existence is still the reason why they exist. They're contingent in the first place. If they're contingent, they obviously must be dependent on something. Existentially contingent. Not in the sense where it's necessary, but more so it's just you don't have an explanation, but you still realize it's contingent, that aka contingency for existing, just doesn't have any type of explanation. Just because it does not epistemically have a explanation for it, does not mean concretely it negates the reason why it does exist. Well, it negates the reasonings for why, or any type of explanation to grant how we know that, but it doesn't negate the fact that it's contingent actually has a reason to exist by being contingent in the first place, concretely. The reason why we know what it's contingent would be negated. That's the same reasoning as to why, oh yeah, knowing this is the case why it exists. We know in terms of objective existence, we know because it's contingent, it would be dependent upon something, therefore granting it a reason to more so exist, more so not know what causes this specific thing, which means it doesn't have a cause for explanation yet. That is the reason for why we don't know it's like contingent factor, because obviously the contingent factor would obviously indicate or just grant the actual like thing to assume what's more simpler based upon analytical things, that it's obviously existentially contingent, based upon existence factors, just and that. Because of that negation of reasoning, we wouldn't have any type of thing to say, oh yeah, because this would exist because of this. We would say it exists because it's contingent objectively, but we don't know what it is, obviously, like, contingent upon, but that kind of actually is paradoxical. So real contingencies, even then, would have reason to exist, actually, yeah, that's paradoxical. Real contingencies don't even fucking make sense then. It's just completely fucking stupid. Like, PSR parsimoniously would actually have, epistemically, it's epistemically parsimonious just to assume that, and plus, it would actually posit, like, I wouldn't say ontological economy, because the ontological economy factor would probably be more so in favor of the, actually no, because of the brute contingency factor, it's not even capable of having some form of ontological economy. Therefore, because it cannot exist, it cannot have any type of actual concrete entities or actual things which we would know about concrete things. So ontological economy is not an applicable thing because it would be contradictory to apply towards that specific thing, given the real entities do not have any type of existence due to paradoxical things we know about reality. Therefore, we cannot grant any type of metaphysical proposition applicable towards that. So obviously, granting the other factor would be more simpler to assume to exist, which would be PSR. So it cannot be regulated under any other type of concrete, specific theme about being involved with that. So it's not a format which would be granted. So yeah, that's kind of debunking the whole entire thing and why it's logically possible, because it's not logical in the first place. It's not actually doing anything which would actually involve logical laws and how we actually grant the proposition to be formatted within our knowledge to how it is, because if anything it just makes it more complex to actually explain, and it's paradoxical in the first place. And PSR kind of already offers an analytical thing for us to say it's true of based upon what we know about brute contingency in the first place. So saying it's brute just by being contingent would be retarded. Another thing is that also restricts brute contingencies from being possible in the first place, because it violates it just violates the fucking law of non-contradiction. That's basic shit in terms of classical logic and things. And plus, that would also invoke the principle of explosion if you want to try and apply, any type of thing where I can just sit here and say, oh yeah, so that just leads to the proposition being proven based on parsimonious factors and things which we would invoke the principle of, because that basically explodes the logic within there and allows for trivialistic stances to be taken, or just more so the stance in itself requiring the dausastic proposition to not actually be coherent under any type of epistemology in which we would actually grant involving logical laws. So it's not possible in terms of that modality. So I think that's very simple to say why that does not work and why Ravi is actually retarded. Or I could just simply say it's simpler because PSR states that everything would have a reasoning. Contingency just deny a type of reason to exist just by having contingency. That makes it paradoxical. And PSR does not have any type of applicable thing. That's just simpler semantics compared to the explanation I gave. I just gave an in-depth semantic thing for why ontologically and parsimoniously it would not be more so any type of thing to assume that's simpler under ontological parsimony and epistemic parsimony. So more so the PSR explanation works better more than brute contingency. So it's not really strictly possible under what we know. So Ravi is so fucking retarded. He has no basic modality. I should also list how fucking modality works for you, retard, real quick, because your fiction, debate, or definition is anything that could be conceived of. That's not a logical possibility. It's anything which can logically be flexible under the framework of logical laws to be granted of a proposition under that specific epistemology and epistemic necessity of knowing the logical laws to actually grant a fucking proposition that could be conceivable. Because obviously we can also apply things like modus tollens, which is a negator for propositions, or the condition of the proposition even be coherent under that specific framework, and then the consequent would actually disprove it, and therefore that allows for us a negation rule, which would basically imply or just grant us the proposition to be proven or substantive. That suggests that more so we can actually say inconceivable propositions are not granted based upon propositional syntax. That's actually Kripke right there. And getting into Kripke, I'm going to explain the noism debate and why Ravi is wrong on that. I have many minutes late on that. So why is Ravi wrong on that? First of all, Nozen didn't address anything I said. He just said I'm wrong about the fucking theistic explanation thing, and then proceeded to say, oh yeah, so it's logical possible because, anything can be conceived of that's logical. And he just went circular saying it's logical. He didn't explain how brute contingency can be logical. He just said, because I agreed to a specific example, I would already be granting it's a brute contingency. First of all, I explained what brute contingency is, and that would indicate and give a clear format that, first of all, brute contingencies would not work like that towards a specific example of an apple appearing out of nowhere. An apple appearing out of nowhere can actually be the factor of it still existing inside the framework where nothing happens for it to exist within the framework, but God still allows for the contingency of it to actually exist, granting it the contingency factor. There's just no explanation in terms of reality for us to find yet. That is the response I gave. And I also gave a hypothetical, I believe, which was the theistic explanation. He also said, I presuppose the theism is true within my explanation. No, I did not presuppose it was true, you fucking retard. I had to fucking grant that it's epistemically necessary for me to explain, under the context of theism, why PSR, under my belief, and PSR would have to be accepted in terms of why I grant that, brute contingencies are not fucking granted or just logically possible towards me. He asked me why it's not logically possible, and that's what followed suit, what I just fucking explained. What's another thing? Another why thing he said, that I said I was retarded for, was saying that brute contingencies are not possible under PSR, or just, theistic accounts. Which, first of all, God being the sufficient thing of all contingent facts, I forgot what it was, COT. No, it's not COT. Yeah, no, it's not COT, it's, BCCF. So, what is BCCF? When discussing about BCCF, and mainly when it's like directly indexed towards PSR as like a framework or applicable framework, from what we know or just generally consider within our epistemology, would be more so towards PSR inclusive propositions, basically speaking. So BCCF would work like saying every contingent fact. So, say for example, a brute contingency is a fact but has no explanation. PSR offers explanation. So brute contingencies, or just specifically speaking, when you have a brute contingency, that would be a contingent fact, which isn't accounted for in terms of reasoning. But BCCF remains that it's true in all possible worlds. No, not in all possible worlds. So, sorry, I'm just fucking confused because I got my dog into the kitchen right now. But point is that mainly BCCF refers to one thing inside one possible world. Every contingent fact in that specific possible world is true. So I ain't really specifically counting possible worlds like contingent truths, just in that, just to clear up, clarity, this and that. Like, I ain't including like necessary truths across, all possible worlds. These contingent factors. Pretty sure metaphysical necessity is like directly contradictory towards the specific thing which we consider would be a contingent fact inside BCCF. But if it's a contingent fact, you can't really change that about the contingency of like the specific world or model of the world which you propose that concretely exists in terms of objective metaphysical propositions. So you would have to include all that. PSR offers for that, and that accounts for all specific contingent facts in there. So yeah. So anyways, given the factor of the analytical, or just what's analytical in terms of the philosophical definition, or the model which invokes that analytical, just like the etymology which grounds what's analytical, like the origin of the said term, and how it's applied under our epistemology for us to convey sort of a descriptor towards, obviously, like, contingent things, this and that, obviously, because, like, obviously, that would be some form of Gödel's ontology, which would actually invoke, formal ontological things, but I'm not talking about, like, the word contingency, and etc., like, BCCF invokes all contingent facts. We would attribute the, obviously, reflexive point about it being contingent, and if it's not, and obviously under the fact that it has no explanation to be, like, contingent or anything, or existence-wise, that kind of also negates the factor of being contingent. So anyways, a point is, under PSR, because it grants, obviously, everything having a sufficient reasoning for existing, that kind of negates towards epistemological brute contingencies and metaphysical brute contingencies, because I believe just like there would have to be a reason for that, which kind of negates the whole factor about brute. Brute, again, which I explained within the beginning, under the contextual structure of how the word is used or applied through our epistemology, or just some form of epistemic framework which constitutes it, or obviously just some form of model of epistemology. Obviously, I believe that invokes the terminology being, well, nothing in the sense. It's just brute. It's just there, like, no, yeah, it's kind of like a brute fact. That thing right there, brute facts. But, yeah, no. Root contingencies are just paradoxical, and I believe I kind of did explain why they cannot happen. Like, it's just so fucking retarded. Um, yeah, no, I don't know why he's even calling me retarded about that. Anyways, point case and done. I think when invoking something like the every contingent fact, when accepting PSR, you'd be including that obviously every contingent fact is an explainable thing, which would obviously be the existence point thing. I also brought up the reason why brute contingencies are basically just impossible in the first place. It's just like so fucking retarded. It's actually so fucking debunkable. Unless you have a good argument against what I offered as a quote unquote sufficient substantive for the specific proposition in question about what we know about our reality. So, um, yeah, I believe that wraps this up. And as it wraps it up, in my honest opinion, Ravi, you're a fucking retard. This was the virtual examination of a specimen, a subhuman specimen, under the care and privilege of and watch of Sabin Lane. You saw the absolute dog shittery, like jittery goobly gawk he fucking spat out of his mouth. This guy would be laughed at from even an atheistic perspective, people who accept brute contingencies. And people like Noism, he's so retarded. Noism is retarded. I'm gonna say that as well. He lost to me badly. Ravi got mauled by Lane. And sitting here recording this, Warrior Z, if you have any type of response video defending your boy Ravi, I would suggest you actually start labbing properly. Stop trying to evade a debate with me. I am publicly challenging you to a debate on if Islamic State should allow abortion in the first place. You obviously went with pro-choice. I don't think you are certain what pro-choice is, because strictly when actually accepting an Islamic perspective, it would be pro-circumstantial, or just obviously, yeah, pro-circumstantial in terms of the standard which we use for abortion. Our ethical standard, that's like the ethical standard for how we uphold it, or adhere towards like the moral proposition in question. So, we can do pro-circumstance versus pro-choice, the one you choose. If you are sitting there and going to deny it, that's fine. I mean, you've ducked Poochie, you've ducked Lane, you've ducked Tron, you've got beaten by Clorox in 7 minutes, you've gotten beaten up by me inside the comments on a stupid exility topic, you've gotten hoed by pretty much the Tron Syndicate. And you literally got shit in your best, like, IRL debate feat. No shade thrown towards you, but it's going high roll with Damar, someone who I've beaten 5 times in a row. Anyways, by the way, since you're wearing a Goku Black profile picture, at this point I just believe Zamasu should just murder this nigga Ravi. Anyways, yeah, that just kind of concludes what I'm saying. Bye. Alhamdulillah. May Allah make all your struggles easier on you guys. And remember, if you ever need help, I have links within my community post towards hotlines, charities if you want to help people. And I will be posting more help towards the Gaza situation, because it's absolutely terrible that things like this are happening towards people, obviously. And, America needs to wake up. People need to wake up, see what Israel is doing. It's just very, 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 very wrong that what they're doing. Trying to take over Gaza, innocent people's lives. And you try and call yourself the most moral army. It's pathetic. I don't know why we're even sending fucking aid over there, military aid. But I don't control the military. All I can do is pray, and I hope Allah saves all these people, protects them from harm, protects them from illness, gives them water, food, shelter, and shelter from violence. Ameen. Inshallah. Please pray with me and share this. Make a dua for them. Please. They're in need. I love you all. Goodbye.